This was our modules, right? Cloud Essentials first module. Now this is the second module, IAM service. We are going to start the services of AWS. Is it clear? Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
So IAM service. What is IAM stands for? Identity Access Management. From the name itself, you can understand. Okay, what is identity? Identity.
One's
Identity
name,
cards.
one's ID, one's
Yes, one's ID or any
name,
user or something.
yeah, username.
Yes. Access
Giving
to
permission,
control.
using.
Yes, using or to control something. And management, managing. So from the name itself, you can understand managing access of users. So here in IAM, it's a free service. IAM is a free service and it is for authentication and authorization. In simple words, if you want to understand what is IAM, you just need to understand it's based on only two elements. That is authentication and authorization. Now, what is authentication? User credentials. That is username or password. And what is authorization? To grant permission. Yes, authorization is to grant permission, right? So what we are going to do in IAM, we're gonna create IAM users. We're gonna create groups for that IAM users. We are going to grant them permissions or policies. And we need to assign MFA. So just understand what is IAM, Identity Access Management. It's a free service of AWS to protect AWS account by authenticate and authorize users. So it's based on two elements, IAM. The whole IAM service is based on two elements, authorization and authentication. Authentication is user credentials and authorization is to grant permissions. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am.
Okay. Yes?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Amreen,
Yes, ma'am.
what is authentication?
Uh, something which
Authentic
is uh,
Authentication is user
User.
credentials. That means username and password. We are going
okay.
to create username and password. We are going to create IAM username, users and username and passwords for IAM users. And what is authorization?
Permission.
Permission.
Permission. To grant
Grant
permission.
permission.
And we are going to attach some policies and give some permissions to these users. Is it clear?
Okay.
Yes.
Now, what I do as a cloud engineer or AWS administrator role, you create IAM user for your team and allow some service as per requirement. You create group to combine users in one object to apply policies. And you create roles to allow one AWS service to communicate to other AWS service. And you're going to create policies, that is permissions, to allow or deny granular permissions. So in IAM, there are four components. Four components of IAM. First is users, second is user groups, third is roles, and fourth is policies. four components of IAM: user, user groups, roles, and policies. In users, we are going to create users. In user groups, we are going to create groups for that users. Roles is basically to communicate from one AWS service to another AWS service. And policies is basically the permissions. We need to attach some permissions and policies to that users, IAM users. So is it clear till now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I will explain again in short. IAM is Identity Access Management. It's a free service of AWS and it's based on two elements, that is authentication and authorization. Authentication is user credentials and authorization is to grant permissions. And the best practice is to grant granular permissions, that means small permissions, just according to the requirement. And there are four components of IAM: user, user groups, roles, and policies. Is it clear, everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
So this is my console, accounts console. Now here in search, I can type the service. Which service we are using right now? IAM, right?
IAM service.
So type IAM. Can you see here IAM?
Yes,
You need
ma'am.
to select.
Yes, ma'am.
You need to select. So now we are into IAM service. This is the dashboard of IAM. Here left side, can you see the four components of IAM: user, user groups, roles, and
Development
policies.
policies.
In users, we are going to create users. In groups, we are going to create groups for that users. And roles is to communicate from one service to another service to service communication. And policies is the permissions of the service which we can attach to these users or groups. Now, what is the difference between root user and IAM user? Root user is who have access of all 200 plus services. Root user will have access of all 200 plus services. Like I'm a root user here. I have created the account. Now I will have all access of all 200 plus services. Now what is IAM user? IAM user is which root user gonna create. Root user gonna create IAM user with the help of the service IAM. Is it clear, everyone?
It will be within the organization. I am user.
Yes, within the organization. Can I proceed?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let's understand the diagram first. This is my account. Okay, this is so we are talking about companies. So every company has their own accounts. So for example, TCS company. So this is the account of TCS company. Is it clear, everyone? This is the account of TCS company. And Cloud Engineer has full control over all these 200 plus services. You are understanding, everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so this is the account, AWS account of company, and cloud engineer will have full control over 200 plus services. In the company, there will be different departments, right? Different teams,
Yes,
be it
ma'am.
testing engineer team or finance team or developers team or Windows team or Linux team. There will be different teams working in a company, right? Now they want to use AWS account. They want to use AWS account. They want to use some service of AWS. For that, they need an account. So can everyone use only one account of company? It will be mess, right? If everyone use the same account, there are 500 or 600 people working in a company, including all this uh, testing engineer team, finance team, developers team. This all are working in a company. And what if they use the same company account? It
No,
will be
ma'am.
mess, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So they will request to cloud engineer to create the IAM accounts for them. So they request to cloud engineer, finance team, testing team, developers team, or Windows team, Linux team, security team, any team. They will request to cloud engineer to create them IAM account. So what cloud engineer does? Cloud engineer creates IAM accounts for these users. He will create users, groups. He will assign MFA to these teams. Here, if testing engineer team wants to access EC2 service, so cloud engineer will create the account as testing engineer team and he'll give the permission of EC2. Just one service permission because they have requested only for one service. But cloud engineer will have access of all 200 plus services. But these teams, according to their requirement, if they have requested for EC2 service, so he'll create, cloud engineer gonna create IAM account for these users and he'll give the permission of EC2. This is known as authorization to grant granular permissions. That is small permissions. You should not give all 200 plus permissions or 100 permissions to these users. You just need to give granular permissions according to their requirement. For now, testing team's requirement is only EC2 permission. So cloud engineer will create the accounts, create the users and groups for this team, and he'll give just one permission, that is EC2. And for finance team, they need permission of billings. So he'll create an account, IAM account for them. He'll create the users, groups, and he'll give this permission to them. And similarly for developers team wants to access S3 service. So what cloud engineer does, he'll create the users and groups for developers team and he'll give the permission of S3. This is authentication. He's creating the users and passwords for them, and authorization. He's granting permissions. He's giving the permissions to them. Right? Understood, everyone?
What
Yes,
is
ma'am.
MFA service, ma'am? MFA service.
Okay. MFA. Now, what is MFA? MFA is multi-factor authentication. That is two-factor. It's also MFA is also known as two-factor authentication. Now you're using, if you're using Instagram.
No, ma'am.
Yes, no?
No.
Okay. So if you use any account like Google Pay or something, any
You have
account,
to add
first,
two accounts.
yes, for one factor authentication is you need to type username and password.
Okay.
If you are using Instagram, first factor authentication is you need to type username and password, right?
Yes.
Second factor authentication is the OTP. After you type username and password, if you open your account in another phone, like your friend's phone or in laptops, you will get then OTP. Why
Okay.
they'll give the OTP? For security reasons, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So that is known as two-factor
Mm.
authentication. First factor is username and password. The second factor is OTP.
OTP for security.
Yes, for security. So MFA is also known as multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication. It is assigned for extra layer security, to give extra layer security. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
So Cloud
Yes, ma'am.
Engineer, he'll create the IAM users and IAM users. In that, he'll also assign MFA for extra layer security. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, what is role? Role is to communicate, like for in some services of AWS, you need to create AWS roles where and service needs to communicate.
Communication
So
and services.
yes, communication between a service to service. So if two service wants to communicate, then we're gonna create role, IAM role for them. Here the example is Cloud Formation. Cloud Formation is a service where you need to create roles so that service and service can communicate. And also there is the another service, that is Lambda, where service and service will communicate. Understood, everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Can you explain once?
What you want me to explain?
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry.
Just
MF.
once explain.
Okay, this diagram.
Yes, ma'am. Diagram.
So this is an account.
Okay.
This is AWS account. AWS account, that is company's account. It's a company's account. For example, TCS company's account. Every company will have their own accounts. TCS company's account. I'm the cloud engineer. There are 200 plus services in AWS, right?
Yes, ma'am.
200 plus services. This is cloud engineer. Cloud engineer. Cloud engineer will have access of all 200 plus
200
services,
services.
right?
Yes, ma'am.
Cloud engineer will have access of all 200 plus services. Now in a company, this is a company. This is a company where there will be multiple departments, right? In one company only, there will not be only developers team. There will be developers team, Python team, which where they will work on a Python, and developer like Java team where people will work only on Java developing, and security team where people work on security, finance team, Windows team, right?
Yes, ma'am.
There will be multiple teams. Let's say this is a Java team. This is a finance team. This is a security team. Security team. Linux team. So in this company, in this TCS company, there are multiple departments. So now the Java team or finance department, Java department, security department, and Linux department, they want to use some services of AWS.
Okay.
Okay, for let's say Java team needs EC2 service. Finance team, they need S3 service. Linux team also needs EC2 service, and security team needs with service. Let's say LAMP service is EFS. So now this Java department wants to use EC2 service, and finance department wants to use S3 service, and Linux department wants to use EC2 service. Similarly, security department wants to use EFS service, but they don't have AWS account. There is an account of their company, but they don't have their own account. They cannot use their personal accounts in companies. You need to use the organization's account. So they will request to cloud engineer, please, because he has all 200 plus service access, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So this team's departments will request to cloud engineer, please create a users and groups for us and grant us these permissions. For us, for Java team, I want EC2 permission. For finance team, they need S3 permission. Linux team needs EC2 permission. Security team needs EFS permission. So they'll request to cloud engineer that we need users, create a users groups and grant us these permissions. So cloud engineer will create an account, will create users, he'll create this users, user 1, user 2, user 3, then he'll create a group, he'll attach this users in the group, he'll put this users in that group, and he'll name it as Java team, and he'll grant permission, EC2 permission. Also, he will assign MFA, extra layer security, so that no one can hack their accounts. Is it clear, everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Sure?
Yes, ma'am. Understood.
So now in IAM, there are two types of user access. two types of user access. One is programmatic access and second is console access. Now what is this? This is known as console access. This is known as AWS console, right? The first dashboard that is known as, this is console access. What is programmatic access? Programmatic access is also known as CLI, command line interface. Now, they are, for in general, there will be GUI and CLI, that is graphic user interface and command line interface. Let's take an example of this Windows. This is my Windows, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so Windows is based on GUI, that is graphic user interface. These are icons. Can you see these icons? These all are graphics. And I am the user. I am accessing the interface between us is graphic, me user interface. Windows is graphic user interface. And what is CLI? Command line interface. In this Windows, there is a PowerShell, Windows PowerShell. This PowerShell is known as CLI, that is command line interface, where we'll interact to this PowerShell or this shell with commands. So if I want to do something, so I need to pass the commands. This black screen is known as shell and CLI, that is commands. These are the commands, command line interface, where we are going to interact this with commands. Is it clear, everyone? Difference between command line interface, that is CLI, and GUI.
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
GUI is graphic user interface. These are the graphics. I'm the user.
Windows is the graphical user interface. Unix Linux
Yes.
is a command line
Yes.
interface.
Linux is command line interface, that is CLI. But after seeing Linux, Windows also started its own CLI.
Yes, ma'am.
This PowerShell, named as PowerShell. So Windows is now GUI as well as CLI. Earlier it was only GUI,
Right.
but now it's GUI as well as CLI. But Linux is only CLI, where we can interact to Linux with only commands, not GUI. Is it clear, everyone?
Clear, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
So in IAM, there will be two types of access, user access. Programmatic access, that is CLI access, and console access. So while creating account, we can give them permission of either console access or CLI access according to their requirement. For example, if Java team wants programmatic access, so they can request to us. So according to their request, we're gonna give them the access. Which access? Like programmatic or console. If they want programmatic access, we'll give them programmatic access. If they want console access, we can give them console access. It's on Cloud Engineer. Cloud Engineer will work purely according to the requirement. Is it clear, everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Two types of access. Now, types of user accounts. Two types of user accounts: root account and IAM user account. So, what is root account? Who is
Root
the
account
root?
means 200 plus services.
Yes,
Access of
root.
200 plus services.
Yes, very good. Root account, where we have 200 plus service access. What is IAM user account? Root user gonna
Going to
create
create
IAM
IAM.
user. Like I'm Aisha. I have created my free 12 months account. I'm the root user. While logging in, I'll be logging in as a root user. So this root user will create IAM user count by using which service?
200 plus.
IAM service. Is it clear, everyone?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
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 Now, policies types. Policies are basically permissions. Policies is the permissions or to all 200 plus service permissions are here. So which permissions we want to give to the departments
Based on requirements.
based on requirement. So here you can attach the permissions. The if the team wants EC2 permissions, you need to type here EC2. In EC2 also there will be multiple permissions, granular permissions like Amazon EC2 container permission or only read only permission. Here you can see full access, EC2, Amazon EC2 full access, provide full access to Amazon EC2. This this is how you're gonna attach the permissions. Permissions is also known as policies. So there will be two types of policies. One is customized policies and other is AWS managed policies. So AWS managed policies is basically the predefined policies. This is the predefined policies. See, can you see here AWS managed, this permissions is already defined by Amazon, AWS. This is known as AWS managed policies, the predefined policies, which is already created by AWS. The second type of policy is customized policies. Customers policies, where you can customize the policies, where you can create your own policies. If there is, if I want to use some policy here, Cloud9. I don't have policy. Can you see the name of the policy here? No, right? But I want to attach Cloud9 policy. So I can also create my own policy. That is known as customized policies. Is it clear, everyone?
Yes,
The
ma'am.
difference
The
between
policies which are created by us.
yes, user customized policies will be created by us. If there is if you got a requirement of any policy and that policy is not available, so you can create your own policy. The second is AWS managed policies, which is the inbuilt policies created by AWS. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Sure.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
It's like keywords and variables. Variables we create and keywords are inbuilt.
No, it's just the permissions. Like we have 200 plus policies are permissions. So IAM user will not have all 200 plus service permissions, only root user will have. So what root user will create IAM user, right? While creating IAM user, he needs to attach some policy, some permission. So if I want to attach any permission, any policy, but there is no policy there. AWS has not created that policy.
AWS is providing that policy. So what the IAM user will do? He creates some policies and he provide to that request. I mean user.
Root user will create the policy for IAM user.
Yeah.
Yes. But if IAM user wants EC2 permission, EC2 policy. So EC2 policy is inbuilt in AWS managed policies. AWS has already created EC2 policy, so you can attach that policy. So basically the difference is AWS managed policies are the policies which is created by AWS, already created. But customized policies is which we are going to create. Is it clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So is it MFA to enable on user accounts? Yes. For extra layer security, we need to assign MFA. That is multi-factor authentication. You have created username and password for this users, IAM users. You have created the account. But what if they don't have security? Anyone can hack what they are doing. So for that reason, we will be creating an MFA. When we assign MFA, they will get the code on their phones or their mobile phones. Is it clear, everyone? It's basically the extra layer security. Clear, everyone?
Clear, ma'am.
Clear, ma'am.
Okay, so this is all about the theory of IAM. So I'm giving you all 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, please revise the IAM and this key points. It's just we are going to create the users, groups, and policies. That's it in IAM. While doing labs, you will understand more clearly. So just revise, and if doubts, please clarify.